You know what, Colin always does the intro, so I was like, I don't know what to say. Hey folks, and welcome to Podcraft. This is the bit where Colin introduces the show and tells you that this is a podcast about podcasting, etc, etc. So as you might have guessed, I don't have Colin with me here today, unfortunately, but I've got a fantastic substitute in the form of Head of Marketing, Jacob. How are you doing today, Jacob?
Woo! It's an honour to be back. Thank you very much for having me, Matthew.
It's good to have you here, and we have I was going to say action-packed, that's over the top, a value-packed episode. We're not going to be doing any stunts here today, but we've got a couple of really good topics to talk through, haven't we? We're going to get into, I think I've noticed in podcasting recently of people going YouTube-First, and I want to kind of pick your brains on that, Jacob. And then I want to talk about pool-based content systems as well, like if you're curating stuff. I think curation's a big part of content output in 2026, so I want to pick your brains on some things around that too. So you'll do all the hard work, Jacob. I'll just ask you some questions. Does that sound
I'm looking
okay?
forward to it because these are two topics I love just arguing about with people. And I think we're probably on the same page, so we won't need to do too much arguing.
Before we dive in, I'll just say that today's episode is sponsored by Beamly, which is a tool that lets you monetize your content, create a membership around your podcast, and create premium podcast feeds for members only. I'll tell you a wee bit more about it when we stop for tea and cakes at halftime, but for now, a big thanks to Beamly for sponsoring this episode of Podcraft. So before we dive into the main topic, Jacob, I just wanted to give a wee anecdote here. Like, I was looking for a podcast episode on a very specific topic recently, and I found this great episode, and it was like from a show which I think was still going, but this particular episode was from 2012, and I was like, man, they had podcasts in 2012. Now, like, not only had I been listening to podcasts for like 2 or 3 years at that point, maybe more, I'd been podcasting for 2 years, so I don't know why I was like, I can't believe they had podcasts back then. So I don't know if that's just like a sign of getting old, where you're like, you almost forget your own involvement back then. So
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of place podcasts back then because I think that was actually after. So my first experience with podcasts was actually on my paper round. Every morning I'd do my paper round at the crack of dawn and I'd stick on podcasts. And I didn't even really acknowledge what a podcast was or why it was special at the time. I was just like, this is some funny people in my ears that are going to keep me company for the next hour while I'm out in the freezing cold delivering papers. So it is always surprising though how far they go back. It feels,
Was that the phone era or was that the iPod era?
Do you know what? It was the iPod era. It was an iPod. It would have been an iPod Touch, I think.
Excellent. Yeah, well, topically, we're going to get into this in a wee while. We've got some stuff to talk about, recent developments with Apple Podcasts, which is very interesting and exciting. I guess, though, where we wanted to start today was, I'll give the listener a bit of background here. So, I mean, as I've said, I've been listening to podcasts a long time, been making them a long time, of course, but from a listener point of view, there's a couple of shows that I listen to, and I've noticed something that's happened recently. Well, starting with one of them, it was a very consistent podcast, and then one day, like, I listen on Overcast, and then one day, or 1 week, it just didn't publish. And you don't immediately notice these things unless you're in a proper routine with them, like, unless you consume that at a certain, doing a certain thing each week. But after a few weeks, I was suddenly like, this show is just not put any episodes out. And of course, life goes on, and, a couple of months later, I managed to speak to the creator, and I'd said, like, I'm hoping you'll get the podcast back on the go. And he was saying, it's still going, and it's a show that they record. I don't know if they record it on YouTube per se, but they record it for YouTube, certainly. I don't know if it's like a live stream on YouTube, but anyway, he says that his co-host was just struggling to edit up the audio episode and publish it, so they've just gone YouTube-First. And like, I get it, because like, although he's a podcaster, like, his business isn't podcasting, it's just a part of what he does. So he was saying that as if, it's fine. Whereas I'm like, I don't know if that is fine, because like, there's loads of reasons why I've got issues with this, but at the same time, I do appreciate that, there must have been work there that they felt was either unsustainable or just not worth taking time away from something else. So before I ramble on about this, Jacob, any sort of initial thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really surprising. I think this was something that you found in the Indie Podcaster survey, wasn't it? That people actually felt that there was less work involved in editing video because it was pretty typical for video to just be kind of chucked onto YouTube because people are so used to live streams and what you see is what you get, right? I mean, like, yeah, I just find that whole thing so surprising because for me, at least, like my conception of it, it's like, I mean, I guess not in actual experience. I've done video podcasts; they have just been chucked onto YouTube, but video always feels like it needs more attention. You need a bit more hardware to process it. You need a bit more blah 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 blah. So it's just always surprising when you hear those things. Like you would think that audio is clearly the easiest thing, but people aren't actually finding that. That's not their experience. So
yeah. Totally. And when you think about or when I think about editing from an audio point of view, like sometimes I'll do very granular editing, like, taking a razor to something and I could really join up a sentence that, I could put something together and when the listener hears it, they won't know that that's an edit. Whereas if you showed the video of that edit, it'd be so jumpy because it'd be all these different little segments. So there's obviously something around that, but I was trying to kind of dig into, what's the workload here that's causing the issues with the audio show. And from what I kind of gathered, it's like they're recording it almost in 3 20-minute segments and then that needs joined together. I don't think they're going in and doing surgical editing of the dialogue, but it's obviously just enough to say that it's not worth it for them. And then, again, I don't know if it's this thing where you could write this off by saying like YouTube is free and everyone's used YouTube before. And it's almost like, well, I'm not asking much of you to get the show on YouTube. I'm not asking you to pay for it or that. Like, again, everyone knows YouTube. So I don't know if they maybe don't understand the importance of this open distribution anymore. More and more creators. Is that potentially true?
Yeah, I mean, I think the honest truth is that a lot of people don't care. Is the thing, right? What they care about is how many eyeballs am I getting or ear canals. And I think a lot of people don't actually think that much about what they have right now. They don't realize the sort of right to open and free podcasting that they have. So as we kind of lose that, I mean, that wasn't always the case, of course. Like it started that way. We started with RSS, we started with audio first, and it's kind of, culturally moved on to be something that can be video too, and now we're finding that creators are just going video because it's maybe not worth the hassle to do the audio. But I do think that's quite dangerous because I think the great value of video is converting people into audio listeners, and you create fans by having them find you with video. But then if you're taking away the sort of mechanism for them to go about their day, like everything that makes audio great, you can listen to it while you're driving, you can listen to it while you're busy, you can, all these ways that people consume audio. If you take that away from people, I actually think you're harming yourself. You're harming the video side as well if you don't have the audio side. Because for me, the ultimate goal would be for someone to find you on YouTube and then subscribe to you on Apple Podcasts or whatever their listening app is so that they can consistently listen to every single episode. Not everyone all the time has time to sit down and watch a video. And not everyone pays for YouTube Premium, so they can't have it running in the background. So really, by just being on YouTube, what you're really demanding of people is that they have enough time to sit down and are not fiddly enough that they don't want to do other things on their phone or whatever. I guess they could watch on a laptop or a TV, but yeah, I think it's quite dangerous, and I think it's dangerous not just for the for like open and free podcasts. I actually think it's quite dangerous for creators. I think they're cutting off a way for people to become fans and consume more content. I just don't think it's realistic to expect people to only watch video. There will be a segment that do that, but I think your super fans will want to listen to every episode no matter what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to stress, like, I don't think this is an audio-video problem. I think it's a distribution problem, and I don't think that's what you're arguing against, Jacob.
No.
Whether because you could do video through open RSS, as we're going to get into, or you could do that at the moment. You could do audio only on YouTube. Either's fine. And as we've seen with recent data that came out, like a lot of consumers, most of the consumers from this study were using YouTube, but they were listening. So it's not to me a thing about video audio. It's more a case of where is this content available. And like you're saying, YouTube is just not a good experience, a good listening experience for a lot of people, because you're right. Like I've done that before, where I've found a conversation on YouTube and it's just your reaction. You close the screen, and then it goes off, and you're like, I forgot I can't do that unless I pay for it. So, and then I've found before brilliant conversations on YouTube, and I've thought to myself, I'll go and grab that on like Overcast or Spotify, and I'll just take it for a walk. Can't find it there. It's only on YouTube, and you're thinking, I don't know why you would. Again, I know there's more nuance to this, and I'm seeing it because this is everything that I do. Whereas I understand that now some people maybe just think, well, podcasting, that's YouTube. Like once it's on YouTube, it's fine. I could forget about it. So
yeah. I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever tried to listen to something that's only on YouTube, and you've went for a walk and you've tried to position your phone in such a way in your pocket that it doesn't press anything on the screen and it doesn't lock? It is the most frustrating thing in the world. And it always ends in disaster.
Yeah. And again, the message in podcasting for all the years I've been in it has been, make this easy for your listener. Like, go and meet your listener where they want to listen. Don't make them jump through hoops and stuff like that. And again, I know we could come back and say, well, YouTube's free, everyone's used YouTube. But again, unless you're doing something and you could get a laptop in front of you, open up, it's not a great experience. And yeah, I fear that unless we're careful, YouTube just could become podcasting. And then we're going to lose a lot from that. There's no doubt about it. YouTube's got a massive role to play in podcasting. And it's a fantastic platform in many ways, but I would hate it to become podcasting itself.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's not just YouTube and it's not just a video problem. I think it is a walled garden, big tech company problem where you lose control over how it works and how it's consumed. So I think Spotify is as much as a problem. And obviously they do offer audio. But again, you're losing what RSS gives you. You're losing your rights and freedom to distribution and how that works. And I think I had a brief opportunity to rant at some people that work at Apple last year, and the only thing I really ranted at them about was, you have to find a way to make video a first-class citizen in RSS, or YouTube and Spotify will eat your lunch. And we will lose what we have right now, and it will kill a massive part of the industry. It will kill other software companies. It will kill the creators' ability to have freedom and control over how their content is distributed. And really the only champion for this is Apple.
Yeah, well, that is a very good segue, intentional or not. But I think it was, time of recording, it was this week, started this week in Pod News. So I take it you yourself saw that story, Jacob, about Apple Podcasts taking video a bit more seriously. So
yeah, definitely, it was quite exciting. I did a little bit more digging into it. I have questions, but maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just I'll bring the listener up to speed if they're not clued up on the nuances of this. So Apple Podcasts and iTunes, it's always supported video, but in a very clunky way. And one of the classic examples of this is if you wanted a video version of your podcast to appear in Apple, what you would do is say we've got this feed, the Podcraft audio feed, we would create a completely separate RSS feed. So we would find a podcast hosting provider that supported video. So off the top of my head, the traditional ones are Libsyn, Blueberry and Podbean, I'm sure. So you would create basically the same podcast again, but you would make sure in the name it had in brackets video version. So you're creating a completely separate RSS feed where you're uploading your video files there. And that means, you could say to your audience, here's the audio version, here's the video version. So you've got these two technically different audiences, different subscriber lists. And then a weird quirk of that as well is, of course, once you're in Apple, you get pulled into all the other apps, your Overcast, your Podcast Addict. Even your one that's labelled a video podcast is going to be pushed there, and it's not going to be a video podcast. So there was all just this clunkiness and a poor user experience. And I think actually watching the videos as well, it was a bit of a parody. They were just tiny little. There was no value in it. So, to be fair to them, it was possible, but it certainly wasn't optimal. But it sounds like, Jacob, you ruffled a few feathers and that they've done all this based on that conversation that you had with them.
Yeah, I'll take full responsibility. Not.
So yeah, they've come up with this, or they've announced this new way that they're going to let you publish video alongside your audio, and although it's not RSS, it still is done through the hosting provider. So this is still ownership from the podcaster. It's not, if we look at Spotify, for example, what you would do in Spotify, you've got your audio episodes, you go into Spotify for creators, as they call it now, you click on one of your episodes and it will say upload a video version. So you'll upload this video version, it lives in Spotify alone, and that completely replaces your audio. So any dynamic ads or anything that you're running via your host, that's just going to get wiped over. So that's not optimal, and it's not the best way to do this. But it sounds like the way Apple are thinking of doing it. So it's not RSS, is it? It's called HLS, which, as far as I could see, stands for HTTP live streaming. What do you know about this, Jacob?
Yeah, so HLS it's a way to stream. Like, it's kind of similar to how you would use YouTube or Netflix. It's chopping up your video into tons of little bits, and sending it, like, say, 5-second segments. And rather than expecting your phone or whatever to download the full file, which might be quite big, might take quite long, might not be possible at all on your network connection, it's just sending it in tiny, tiny little segments. And it will be able to adapt if, like, you'll have seen if you're watching Netflix or YouTube and suddenly your network changes, the quality might just drop, but the whole thing will, it'll keep playing. It's not going to buffer and do all these horrible things that the internet used to do. It will keep going. So it's that similar kind of approach. It's streaming it, it's cutting it into tiny little bits, and it's able to adapt to what you're able to get, really, what your network connection can support, which is kind of what it needs to be, right? And it feels like what they're trying to do is have it sit beside audio, and it seems like quite a minor point. Like, I see what you're saying. Like, they have had some way to do video. It's been a separate feed, but I mean, what we're seeing clearly, even this anecdote that you gave at the start of the episode, friction will just stop people from using it. It has to be as easy, and it has to be built into the host. If I can go to like one of the hosts that supports it at the moment, what are they? Acast, Art19, Omni Studio, Simplecast. I think those are the ones that they're starting out. If I can go in there and just upload my edited video, have them strip out the audio, put that onto my regular RSS feed, and then take the video and integrate that into the RSS feed using the HLS, or however it is that they're going to do it. It has to be that easy, there can't be two separate places that I need to do things, can't have different files. Like, if we create friction for this, it won't work. People won't use it. People will find reasons not to use it. Like, on that podcast that you were listening to, like, I understand what they're saying about it being a bit of a pain to edit the audio, but frankly, it should be as easy as edit the video first and then rip out the audio and take the audio and put that on your regular RSS feed. That's it. That's all you need to do. So that it's really on the platforms. It's in their best interest to make this as easy as possible for people to do, or they won't bother. And this is where Apple needs to push standards, because they are the big industry player that actually seem to care about RSS and free and open podcasting. And then it's on the software companies as well, the hosting companies, to make that a really easy experience. They're going to have to work together, and they're going to have to work together pretty tightly to make this an easy and great experience, and just as easy as it would be to upload it to YouTube. Yeah,
no, I agree. And yeah, I know Apple has their issues, and folks have got their opinions of Apple one way or another, but say what you like about them, like they could have eaten podcasting at the start. Like, they could have just owned podcasting, and they left it open. And I know, again, they maybe haven't done as much as they could have to support a lot of the podcasting 2.0 stuff, but they've at least dipped their toe in there and showed interest. And again, going down this route shows that they don't want to own it. They want to, they want to play the open podcasting game, and I think that's very encouraging, and I think it's much needed for it. You need a company like this size to come in and kind of support open podcasting, because all of the other platforms, they would just like to get everyone onto that platform, into that walled garden, whether that's Spotify or YouTube.
Exactly.
So yes,
it's encouraging that they're doing anything at all, because as you say, there was a long period where Apple didn't do much. I mean, they were updating the Apple Podcast app, and it made discoverability a bit easier for the kind of end consumer, but they didn't do a lot to actually innovate or do anything with software companies in the industry. So it's really nice to see them take like what's quite a big step here, to integrate video into it and show that, look, guys, we're still here. We still care about podcasting as it is just now, and maybe we can, fight for this corner and not let the YouTubes and the Spotifys just gobble this all up and create their walled gardens.
So I guess, I mean, the listener might be thinking, when can I get involved in this? And the timeline at the moment, like time of recording, we're kind of mid to later February, and it's looking like March that we'll begin to see rollouts of this. Jacob, you talked about the 4 hosts that this seems to be launching with. They're not hosts that a lot of folks I know host with. Simplecast maybe, but the other ones I tend to see them as more networky hosts. But I would expect like this will be rolled out gradually throughout your other hosting providers, I would think. But one issue, again, I'm saying this with no real knowledge of HLS, but from other sources I've listened to in the industry over the past year, this could be quite expensive to provide that service, because once you're, like at the moment, I think we get off quite lightly with our audio-first podcast hosts because we're uploading very, very small files in 2026. But when you're uploading, presumably not even one video, but multiple versions of that video, I don't really know how it works, but video hosting, it must going to be bumping that price up a fair bit. So
yeah, I think that's probably going to be the case, and not exactly a massive vote of confidence in it. I couldn't find any pricing at all for any of them. I think some of them already offer other different forms of video hosting, right? But I couldn't see any public pricing for them at all. So my take on that is that it's probably an off-menu kind of thing, which is never good. You never want to walk into a clothes store and not see any price tags. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see once this actually rolls out with Apple, and presumably they want to make it that's something available to more podcasters, what that looks like. But yeah, one of my main questions around this was, why have we started with, well, actually I can understand the business case for starting with network focused hosts. That does make sense. But yeah, I would maybe like to see, like, from Simplecast, what's this going to cost? If I'm just an indie podcaster, I want to get my video podcasts up onto Apple Podcasts. What is this actually going to cost me? What's it going to cost me more than I'm already paying for audio hosting?
Yeah, and I mean, one potential good side is, like, if you run dynamic ads, you'll now be able to do that hypothetically with your video podcast. I think that's a big part of this. Like, it won't be a case of once I put video out there, the ads are either baked in or they're third party or whatever. Like, I could control my dynamic ads. A potential downside of this is just that it's far too expensive, and people say, no, I'm just putting it on YouTube, and then we're back to the start. But that's for somebody more clever than me to figure out, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see what that looks like, because I mean, it is always going to be hard to compete with free. That could be somewhere where this whole thing falls down. But at the same time, HLS is a standard created by Apple, and which means that they possibly could make a HLS V2 that is more efficient. Do you know what I mean? So if it doesn't work out immediately, if the prices seem crazy, I wouldn't kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily. It may evolve over time and it may get better. This does happen with streaming standards and audio codecs and video codecs and all these things. They get better and more efficient over time. So maybe this is just a starting place. But anyway, probably best not speculate too much on the pricing because we haven't seen it yet.
Well, before we move on to the next section then, I'll just give a quick shout out to this episode's sponsor, Beamly. So if you're on a podcast and you've ever thought about offering something a bit extra for your most engaged listeners, this is well worth a look. Beamly lets you create paid podcast feeds and memberships all in one place. You could set up a private RSS feed so members get access to things like ad-free episodes, bonus content, extended interviews, or even more informal updates. The sort of behind-the-scenes stuff that your core audience actually cares about. And it's not just audio. You could host video podcasts, courses, and other member content directly on your own site. So instead of patching together a few different tools, you could run it through all one platform. If you've a small but loyal audience and you want a simple way to monetize that properly, Beamly makes it straightforward. You could have a look at beamly.com, that's BEAMLY.com, and see if it fits with what you're building. All right, back to the episode. We want to talk about pulley-based systems. Jacob, when we started recording, you said there was some builders outside your house using a pulley system, an old-school pulley system to get like roof tiles up to the roof.
Yeah.
So is that what we're talking about now?
Yeah, totally. Actually, it's been really interesting to watch them. So I was wondering if maybe we could, I don't know, pulley up some microphones or something. Who knows?
How to AI-proof your business. Use an old-school pulley to take roof tiles up to the roof. AI can't do that and won't be
Absolutely
able
to.
not. So, yeah, this is a topic that's been on my mind as well, and I think the listener could be really interested in this. So I alluded to it at the start, like, if we think about content in 2026, like, there's nobody out there, there's no audience out there who needs you to give them information anymore. But I think there's a big demand for curation, especially because there's now so much info. So, you know, a person in a certain topic that takes all the info that's out there and curates it and tells you, you know, here are the things I think you might care about. That is going to add a lot of value in this era where we could just have infinite information at our fingertips. And it's a project I've been thinking about doing myself because I've got a podcast in the tabletop miniature hobby space, and I've been really interested in creating a newsletter to complement it. So I want the podcast essentially to sponsor the newsletter, so it markets the podcast. But I want something else in the newsletter that's of value. Like, I don't just want to publish a newsletter that goes out every week that says, here's a new podcast episode, because that's completely redundant. They could get the podcast episode anyway. And in that industry, there's a lot of opportunity to talk about products and services. And for those of you listening, you know, I'm sure your own topic, your own niche, has a lot of services or topics or products or whatever that you talk about, that you use, that are of interest to your listeners. So imagine you could create, and this doesn't have to be a newsletter, this could be on your podcast itself, where you're just curating on a regular basis. You know, here are 5 or 6 things this week that came out that I'm interested in, and I think you will be too, and here's why. So you're not just giving them this massive info dump of like, here's all the products I found this week. So that this has been on my mind recently about how to actually go about doing this, because I know that I could just create a list of like 50 websites to keep up to, or I could sign up to social media and just follow all these different companies and manually like keep a list of who's releasing what. But in this day and age, I think technology should be able to enable us to at least automate that a bit and have, I guess, what you would call a pull system. So off the bat, Jacob, do you think this is a reasonable idea or a daft idea? Or
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a really good use of AI. I think AI is really good at some things, really bad at other things. And one of the things it's really good at is collecting information. Because we've given it some tools, it can read the internet, it can, you know, it can understand the code of a website page really, really well, better than you or I. So I think this is kind of perfectly suited for that, and it's great. Like, it's something that would take you quite a lot of time to go and look at like 10 or 15 different websites, and you know, filter through things and pick things out. And this is something that an LLM could do really easily. I've actually given this a little bit of thought ahead of time, and I've got 1 or 2 different ways that you could do it. One way that I think you could do it yourself. Another way that you could do this yourself too, but it's a bit of a learning curve. You need to learn a platform to do it. And the third way is you could build a whole dedicated app to this, but that's, you know, probably not for this episode. Yeah, do you wanna dig into a few different ways you could do it?
Yeah, I'll just say up front, like, my initial idea was to use Feedly, which is a tool I've always liked, which is like it takes the RSS feed of websites and stuff, and you could build lists in there, so you just go on and it's like a social media feed but without all the crap. But I found, like, in this industry, there's a lot of websites out there from like 1994, and like there's just some websites for one reason or another, like there's no RSS feed on there, so it means that I could only maybe pull from half them. So yeah, I was looking for alternatives. So yeah, I'm really, really interested to hear what you're thinking there, Jacob.
Yeah, that's the thing. And again, this is where it can be quite helpful. It can just bridge some wee annoying technology gap. If they all had RSS feeds, like, this would be pretty trivial. And you know, we could have done this like pre-AI, no problem at all. But yeah, if you've got that just kind of inconsistency, you need to be able to smooth over the gaps where the different websites don't quite match and how they work, then yeah, it's a good way to do it. So the first way that I would say you could do it, and the easiest way, and you could probably do this yourself this afternoon, is whatever your chatbot of choice is. If you go to ChatGPT, there's custom GPTs there. If you go to Claude, you've got Claude projects. I'm a Claude man. I prefer Claude. So I would set up a Claude project, but it's the same idea for a custom GPT. And the thing with these chatbots now is they're perfectly able to go and read the internet. No problem at all. They can navigate around. They can, go to different pages. That's great. So I would set up a custom project in there. I would write a prompt. I would say I've got these, however many websites, 10 websites. And I would kind of give it a little procedure. I want you to go to each of these websites in turn. I want you to look at all of I'd give it when you give it the link, I'd give it the blog link, just to cut out a few steps. So I'd give the blog link for each of the ones you want to monitor. And I would tell it that I want you to go through each of these links one by one, and I want you to look between this date range and this date range. Or you could say, like, I'll tell you, when you're starting this work, I'll tell you what date range to look for. And I want you to find every article that's a product announcement. And then I want you to do this one by one. Keep note of each product announcement that you find in a table or something like that, or a notebook of some sort, and it'll spin something up in the background. And I want you to give back to me every single article within this date range that looks like a product announcement, and give it back to me in a nice format, like a markdown table or something like that. And you might need to do a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of this and that, and maybe you will have some problems with some sites, but I think for most of them, that should actually work. That should be enough. It should be smart enough to navigate through, like if it's got pagination, it should hopefully see that. You might need to, this is where you need to go a bit back and forth. If you notice, right, it's got this blog has pagination, it's got page 1, page 2. You might need to say...
What's pagination, sorry?
So when you've got a list of blog posts on or a list of things on a website, and you're only seeing say 9 of them, and then you need to go to page 2 to see the next 9 and so forth. So if you say, I want you to look at the last 90 days, but they're putting out a blog post every week, right? It's going to have to go to page 2, page 3, page 4, this kind of thing. But usually that happens in the URL. So it'll be miniatures.com/blog/page 1, page 2, page 3, that sort of thing, So it should be smart enough to do that. And that's where I would start, because I think you could kind of prototype that little kind of an app of your own in just an afternoon. And like I say, you might have some gotchas, like some sites it might struggle with, and you'll need to figure out how do this for this site and do that for that site. But you can just add that all in the prompt. And if you set this up as a project in Claude, or you set it up as a custom GPT, that means that every time that you want to run this, you just start a new chat in your project. You tell it, this is the date range, and anything else. Like if you're looking for something specific, you could give it some other different prompt. I'm looking for specifically sci-fi product releases this week, that kind of thing. And you could have it sort of just return to you ones that seem like sci-fi. I'm not saying it won't have problems. Like I say, it might take some tweaking, but I think that would take you a good portion of the way to what you're looking for, without necessarily having to learn any new tools or anything like that. I think these sort of projects, Claude projects and ChatGPT, custom GPTs are a really nice way for people to make what is essentially a little app for yourself. You set it up so that it knows what to do every single time, and then you just start a new chat and you tell it, this is what we're doing this week. And you set it up in the prompt and you tell it, this is what I'm going to tell you in my message, and this is what I want you to do with this information. So that you're just making your life easier. So you might spend an afternoon kind of setting it up and get it working as you want, but then every week that you want to make it go and search for product releases, you just give it the date range, tell it to go, you'll come back in half an hour and it's done. So that's one way to do it.
I'm encouraged at that because, I was going to say, that sounds like something I could at least attempt. Nothing was above my head. Is a project in Claude called a Claudeject? That's what I was wondering.
No, but they should do that.
So now that we've got the accessible way, have you got a super complicated way that'll take like years to learn, or is
It's
it,
middle of the road. It's middle of the road. It's definitely for people that want to tinker. There's no code involved still, but there's a platform. You've used Zapier, haven't you? You've heard of Zapier?
I've heard of. I've never actually got my fingers on it before, but yeah,
Right.
I know a bit about it.
The idea of Zapier is that you're chaining together different things. So, like for example, you might connect it to ConvertKit now, and then you might connect it to Slack. Let's say we do this right for some things. So you're connecting different apps and different bits of software together, and you're saying when someone subscribes to my email newsletter, send me a message in Slack. And there's like a list of triggers and a list of actions, and it's basically that. In response to this, do that, and it can be helpful to connect different apps together and that otherwise might not connect together, and you can sort of automate things. That's a really simple example, but you can automate like quite a lot of complicated processes and different things with it. So there's a platform called, similar to Zapier, but kind of different in a lot of ways as well, called N8N, N8N. And it's similar to Zapier in that you're kind of connecting together different triggers and different actions. So if this happens, do that. But the difference is that it's intended to be very AI first. So actually, you're kind of connecting together different prompts and different things. And you're saying, when this happens, send this whatever information to this AI and get an output from it. And then with this output, send it to this and do that. So I think it would take, rather than it taking like an afternoon, I think you could have a play about with this and kind of get a sense of what you can do. And you're basically stringing together different prompts and different little bits of software. It's all very visual. There's no code. So you're working on like a sort of whiteboard where you're just sort of literally connecting together these little tiles that do different things. And I think like if you spent maybe like a few weekends watching some YouTube videos to learn about it, there's lots. In fact, there's a friend of the show, Mike Russell. He does some great explainers on how to use this as well, that you might have already come across. Or if you've not, you should check them out. Start with Mike Russell. He will show you how to use it.
Yeah, I mean, he was telling us, and this is a couple of years ago now, so God knows what stage he's at, but like he was basically doing an AI-based newsletter, wasn't he? So he was talking about the latest trends in AI, and he had a pull system set up. But I think this was, as Mike, as how deep he is into this stuff, I think it was as extreme as his pull system was then... the AI went through it, scripted it, and then used Mike's cloned voice to record it. I think I could be making this up a wee bit, but I'm pretty sure that was what was happening. Like this thing was going out hands free.
Yeah. So I mean that's really cool. But this is all done without code. I'm not slandering Mike's technical abilities in any way, but self-described to me, he said, "I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer. I don't even know where to start with it."
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that. It sounds complicated, but it is not something that you could not teach yourself in a few weekends, by just watching some YouTube videos. It's not out with the realm of possibility for regular creators to build these really cool little workflows now. There are, like I say, there's tools where you're just dragging and dropping things together, and you're just trying to figure out. The biggest thing is you try to kind of teach yourself what you can do and what you can't do. You might have a million ideas of things you can do, but like. I think you'll find that you can do quite a lot of them just by stringing together these little tiles, and you'll find out naturally what you can't do as well, what's a little bit more complicated that might require a developer. But I think I would encourage anyone listening and yourself, Matthew, to give it a wee go. Have a look at N8N. It's a really good way to make more complex little AI workflows and tools and almost like apps for yourself without getting into any code whatsoever. You do not need to know how to code whatsoever. So I'd encourage you to have a look. Like I say, Mike, self-proclaimed, not a developer, not a super technical guy. He is just a serious tinkerer. And everyone, I think, every creator has the potential to get there if they're motivated.
Yeah, I'll definitely start with your first your Claudject based tip. And ultimately all I want is to have this 30 to 50, like, here's what came out this week, and I'll take a look through it and I'll pick out 5 or 6 things that I think are cool and I'll talk about them myself. So it's really, it's just getting the stuff to talk about without having to go out there and just look everywhere for it. So but I think this is a good strategy for, like we keep saying, anyone listening who's, orbits around any sort of products or services or whatever. So there's opportunities here, isn't there?
I'll give you a wee fallback just in case you have problems with that. Now, in Claude, if you're using Claude, there's something called, that's pretty new, called Claude Cowork. Now, one of the special things about Claude Cowork is that it has a bunch more tools that you don't get in a regular chat. It's in the same interface, it's not a different website or anything. When you go into Claude on the left-hand side, you'll see, I think, an option to toggle between chat, Cowork, and maybe even Claude Code now as well. Ignore Claude Code, that's not what we're talking about. In the middle, I think is Claude Cowork. One of the special things that Claude Cowork can do is it can open a browser and it can actually click around. So if there were issues with it being able to navigate around, you could tell Claude Cowork to do this and it will literally be able to scroll down and click onto the next page of results. That kind of thing. That would be a foolproof way to do this. You might need to let it work for an hour or so, or however long it takes, but ultimately, who cares? It's happening in the background. It's doing it for you. So that's a great fallback and another wee thing to have a play about with.
I'll hope to report back on next week's episode, actually. I'll let the listener know how I got on, and of course, if anyone else, if anyone out there's tried it, please let us know. The best way to do that, thepodcasthost.com/voicemail. Send a wee clip in, let us know how you get on with that. I'd be really interested to hear if anyone's trying it as well. So thanks for all your tips and advice, Jacob. It's much appreciated.
That's quite all right.
Cool. Last thing I had on the agenda was Anchor. Colin and I were talking about Anchor recently on the show, and we're kind of saying that, like, back when Anchor was really popular, I guess if you went back to like 2017, 18, and it was basically like you could just record some audio on your phone and just publish it straight into, Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. Like, it made audio podcasting very easy just to push it out. And I was really critical of it at the time for a couple of reasons. Like, it was because recording quality just on a phone wasn't really there yet. The audio was often bad. And then because it made it so easy, it also caused there to be just a lot of, like, one and done shows and slop. Before AI slop existed, there was slop of a different kind out there. So at the time, I was kind of a bit negative about it. But these days, I look back on that quite fondly, and I wish an app like that existed these days. And then, coincidentally, I was listening to the Pod News Weekly Review, and James and Sam had an interview with Tony Doe from the Nigerian Podcast Index. So he was saying, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he was talking about, the fact that Anchor was free was good, but he says it's important to remember the way it was built. Like, people could record their content directly from their phones and publish it instantly. And he was saying at the time, Anchor was also submitting podcasts on behalf of creators to the major podcast directories. So a lot of people who didn't even understand RSS feeds still ended up in actual podcast directories. And that led to a huge wave of content during that period. So he was saying even now some people start podcasting because they see something as free, but many actually began when Anchor was available, specifically because of how easy it made the process. And a lot of them have stayed on the platform, which is now Spotify, of course, but works in a different way. But it made me kind of misty-eyed for the days of that Anchor app, and I just wish we had something like that again. I think, these days, if we look at all these great lav mics that you get, like the Rode wireless micro and the Boya Mini and stuff, the DJI mics, I think you would get some really good sounding shows now. So, I don't know, it's just been on my mind recently, and because that popped up, I thought I'd mention it. So, any thoughts yourself?
Yeah, I mean, even just the microphone built into phones now is way, way better than it was back then. And add a little bit of processing, and I think that could be totally doable. You're right, I missed the idea of it. At the time, it definitely felt like slop. There was so many like 1 or 2 episode kind of podcasts out there, and it just felt like we were polluting the podcast landscape. But at the same time, how many podcasts grew out of that like ease, that lack of need for fidelity, that lack of seriousness in a way. Like that was a good thing. That was when podcasting still felt like the Wild West, and it was it's not that it's not exciting anymore, but it still is, obviously, especially to us. But yeah, it felt a little bit different. It felt a bit rougher around the edges, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Even if it felt a bit like it could have been a bit of a threat at the time. Like, yeah, there was potential for shitification. Yeah, I don't know. I think like the combination of just like literally just a microphone on your phone plus a bit of processing. I don't see why we couldn't have something very similar to that, but better now. And as like these external microphones, 100% for people that have the budget to buy that. But I think there's a lot of people, a lot of places in the world that could benefit from having something like Anchor that could make them sound like more than passable just by using their phone. A lot of important conversations that maybe aren't making their way into the world right now that could do. So
we starting a bring back Anchor campaign? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah, let's just make it ourselves, man. We'll just
we'll
get Claude
Anchor
out
2.
and we'll say, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do, Claude. Let's make it so. And it won't work, but we'll have tried.
What's the in the nautical industry? What's the opposite of an anchor? I guess it might be a sail or a propeller.
Yeah, sail. Yeah. Pod sail. There you go. Done.
Yeah.
I'll get the domain name right now.
Yeah, I mean, it just like as long-time listeners to the show know, like we've talked a lot about like walk casting and stuff, the past sort of 6 months, and Neil at the Photo Walk, who was doing these fantastic episodes, just out walking his dog, and I've done it a few times myself, both on this show and on my own show. Just grabbing the lav mics, getting out there, and just having a conversation with the listener, and it's such a good way to record, and it's also such a good listening experience as well, as long as you're not blown out your arse like I am in the first 5 minutes. But I guess the thing with Anchor was once that was recorded, you hit publish and that was it. Whereas now, I'm recording it wherever I'm recording it, I'm generally taking it back to the computer and doing whatever I need to do and uploading it then. So it's that wee magic step of like, it's ready, top and tail, get out there, that's it in all the podcast directories. That's the dream. And if an app exists right now that does that, I don't know if maybe the Spreaker app could potentially still do that. The Spreaker app or the Podbean app, I couldn't rule out the fact that they might potentially have that in them still, but last time I looked, I don't really know that they were being that supported or updated, but it's worth a look, certainly. It's worth a look to see if you could do it on Spreaker or Podbean.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's probably like workarounds, nothing that easy, right? But you can definitely just use the voice memos app on your phone to record and email that to yourself or whatever. It could work. But it was something kind of magic about how easy that was, I guess. Yeah,
and that's it. Like it to go full circle on the start of the episode. We're talking about breaking down barriers and making it easy for creators and providing a good benefit for folks to make sure that they're getting their content out there instead of just sticking it on YouTube. And it's little things like this that just smooth the road. But it's also education too. It's making sure that people are aware that they could do these things, that you can get your podcast out in all these different places. So yeah, there's an overall theme to this episode as well. But the good fight continues, doesn't it? So
absolutely. And if you do want to try something like that, you want to just record on some cheap hardware and get decent fidelity, you could use Alitu. It will clear it all up for you, and you can host it right there. Or if it's the free hosting site that you're most interested in, or pals@rss.com, I've added a free hosting tier. Or you could connect them together. You could get Alice and use RSS, or do it either way. So I mean, the kind of capability still exists out there, but it's not quite the same.
Good stuff. That's all I've got. Any closing words or thoughts, Jacob?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
De nada. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Podcraft. As Jacob said, be sure to check out Alitu, the best podcast editing platform on the planet. alitu.com is where you could find that. And a final thanks as well to this episode's sponsor, Beamly, which is a fantastic membership platform for your podcast too. So I'm terrible at spelling out websites. Beamly.com, Beamly.com, that's where you'll find it. And thanks once again to Beamly for sponsoring this episode.